As a grown woman, I think we've all been in situations where it always feels like someone's in competition with us. We're not meaning to be competitive. That's just how we are. But it feels like sometimes women are just always butting heads. And then the whole story, when I was trying to invent that legend, I wanted that legend to also reach women, to be able to know that we're all meant to shine in a different way, but we just help one another instead of always seeing that we're in competition with one another, that we each have a spot. We each have a gift, where we belong. We're not in competition with one another. We're here to actually help one another.
Being an artist can be a heck of a ride, but you're not alone. On Journey of the Arts, we tell inspiring stories of artists and chat with those who support us on this path. I'm your host, Lola Opatayo, writer, editor, singer, and all-round lover of words. Come with me on the journey. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Journey of the Arts. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting an award-winning Cree Métis storyteller and multidisciplinary artist from Saskatchewan. My guest is Arnolda Dufour-Bowes, and we're talking about her latest children's book, Maggie Lou Meets Her Match. Arnolda has an art exhibit and a short film featured in 3 galleries this past year. She has a play that is listed for production in April 2026 with Gordon Tutusis Niganowin Theatre, and she is a part of the Whistler Film Festival Screenwriters Lab 2025 with her dramatic feature, Truth Walkers. Her Maggie Lou series is in development stages of becoming an animation, which is truly exciting. Welcome to the show, Arnolda.
Well, thanks for having me, Lola.
I'm really thrilled to speak with you today. As I was saying to you just before we started talking, you're the type of artist that I find deeply fascinating. And I say that because you are a multidisciplinary artist. And as someone who is that same way, I find myself, I'm always curious to see how other artists are managing their time, how they're staying productive, and how they're juggling all of it. So I'm really interested in seeing what creative strategies you share with us today.
Creative strategies? Basically picture a circus tent. And in the center, there's a ringmaster. And the ringmaster is juggling those, those round things. But they're all on fire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything is always on fire.
And then everything's on fire. But you're still managing.
Utter chaos.
The circus is still happening. That's basically the only strategy I have.
Oh, yeah. I feel that every single day.
There's no secret. Yeah. You just jump in and do it, I think.
Maybe that is the secret. You just do it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was on another podcast. And I said, this is kind of the one of the things you do is you just jump. For me, I don't jump in 2 feet. I always jump in headfirst. So it's like, I've never written screenplays before, but I'm going to write one. And then now I've been a part of how many different labs with the Whistler Film Festival. It's like, I've never done, my artwork other than privately, but okay, well now I have an art exhibit and I've never done a short before, but I'm going to do a short. So it's just like, you jump in and you go and you just figure it out. That's how I've done it. Same thing with plays. I haven't written plays before, but I know story. So it's just learning how to tell stories in different ways.
I love that.
Learning how to tell it either on stage or with art, with music. So.
I love that. It sounds like a lot of audacity to me.
Yeah, a lot. Well, I guess it's similar to Maggie. She just jumps in. Bumps and scrapes and all of that along with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'll try to remember that when I'm overthinking things. So thank you. That was very useful for me.
Yeah, there's always overthinking, right? And I think as artists, we're always overthinking. But I think too, it's just, I always say, have the courage. Just do it. We're always going to have fears, right? And I always tell my kids when they were growing up, I was talking to them about fears. That no matter what you do, I know because they think I'm courageous and I do all these crazy things, like whether it's skydiving or surfing or whatever. And I'm like, it's not that I don't have fear. It's that I don't let the fear stop me. Right. When you're standing there and you're getting ready to jump out of a plane, your body's saying, no, don't do this. right? And it's the same thing when I'm about to hit send on something to an editor. It's like, everything in your body, right. No, don't do it. It's not ready yet. It's like, no, somebody just got to do it. So,
right.
And you won't know until you try. And maybe too, I think it's partially age. Like, I think like people say it's confidence. Like that, no, maybe it is confidence, but it's more as you get older. It's like, well, if I don't do it now, I don't know when I'm going to have time again.
True.
Like I said, after 50, you're like, we're on the other side now.
Right.
If I don't do this
now or never.
If I don't do this now, I don't know when I'm going to get the chance again. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And you literally don't know unless you just jump in and do it.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with failure. I think that's something too I've always tried to teach my kids. No matter what you do, be okay with failing or learning along the way. I don't consider it failing. I always say you're learning something.
Right.
So if something didn't go right, well, figure it out and either try again or maybe that wasn't your thing. So I think that's how I view it. Yeah.
I like that. Maybe that isn't your thing.
Yeah. And that's why I always tell my kids, you always have the freedom to change. Like I only came into, I've always been creative. I've always done storytelling, writing stories since I was little. And then I grew up and then of course in the thing, go, get your education, work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, did all that. And all that creativity falls away because I was busy paying bills and became a nurse, became an instructor, did all that. And then, I love that it came back. And I always tell my kids, always have the freedom to be able to change direction. And I said, never stay stagnant. Whatever you do, just always stay moving and always stay learning. So like even a couple weekends ago, me and my daughter, first time ever, we both competed in a strong woman competition in Alberta. And I told her, we're just going to jump in. We've never done this before. We're going to try it out and see if we like it. And we both did. And she did awesome. She's 18 years old. And then I got second. So that was exciting. But it was something we've never done before. And I said, and you won't know until you try. So
yeah.
I was trying to ignite things in her. And I think she's excited to go on to her next one. So
yeah. You've given us a bit of a pep talk. I think that's what we need.
Yeah.
Unless you try. Yeah.
Unless you try.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then doing that competition with her was like kind of the mama bird and the baby bird. And I was like, hey, I'm going to jump with you and we're going to fly together and we'll land together and you're going to find out whether you like this or not kind of thing. So just the tattoo that me and her got, we have matching tattoos. It's a mama bird and a baby bird. So I said, I love that moment that we had together as mom and daughter to be able to say, hey, we're doing this together and we're going to see how it turns out. So, yeah.
I love that. And it reminds me a lot of the main character of the book, Maggie Lou, and her cousin, Rosie. So do you want to tell us a bit about, I don't know if I want you to tell us about the series or about this particular book. Maybe tell us about the series.
The series? Okay, well, it's Maggie Lou. And she's just this rambunctious young girl who's always not meaningful to get in trouble, but it's more of just her activity and her nonstop and her constantly experimenting and being curious about the world around her and wanting to try things. She is that fearlessness, right? And in the first book, like she goes through 3 different things where she learns lessons, she's trying over and over again. Some she's failing at and then some she does better at, right? And it's just that constant. And I think that's, for me, the reason why I wrote it was because that's kind of how I grew up. I maybe wasn't as outspoken as she is. I'm probably more like her now as an adult than I was as a kid, right? And then, she just grows up and then learning, relationships. How does that work? Communication between other people in her family, outside her family. How does the world around her affect her and how does she affect the world around her?
Yeah.
How does she and her actions affect the world around her?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really comes across is that bond with the family, just like you were saying. And Maggie Lou is at every turn and with every endeavour surrounded by family. There's that strong family support.
Well, I'm Cree Métis. Okay. So we are very close. Mom and dad are always there, aunties, uncles, there's always tons of cousins, people are always around. Same thing with my kids. They kind of grew up with that same thing. They grew up very close to their kokum and mushum, so their grandma and grandpa. So just having that family always around them was just very important to put in there. Yeah.
Right. And that really shows very strongly in the book. There's such a strong pull of the storytelling traditions. And as I was reading the book, it reminded me so much of the books that I read when I was growing up. And I saw so many similarities. And so I thought I'd ask you, how or to what extent are you able to draw on your storytelling tradition to bring that story that you wanted to talk about into the now?
I think what is, like I said, I grew up coming from a long line of storytellers. My dad probably being the most influential, growing up with him, always listening to his stories.
Right.
And that's kind of how I started getting into more storytelling. Was the first short collection of short stories that I had was on my dad's life. And it's from all the stories that he told me growing up. So I grew up doing construction with him. And wherever we went, we travel to go do construction.
Right.
And either while we're working or while we're driving, I'd hear all these stories about his life or, my kokum's life. And as a young kid, I just stored them. Right. But then it helped me. Like I remember writing stories in high school or even in elementary school, the teachers would pull me aside and they loved the story. So it's always been a part of me. And then you just grow up and find different ways to tell them. So.
Right. I really love that you're able to draw on that tradition, because I think that it's very. I come from a country that was colonized, and so it's very difficult sometimes to draw on those storytelling traditions because there's so many layers of meaning and understanding and experiences that the stories that you hope to tell aren't as strong and strongly tied to my traditions as I would have loved. So I was really curious to see how you're able to maintain that strong storytelling tradition. And in the book, there is a lot of love and a lot of freedom in the family dynamics. It's so strong, like you can't miss it. But there's also discipline where necessary. So you can see that there's balance. Can you talk to me a little bit about this balance, specifically as it relates to your culture?
Well, I know like in our culture, it's not uncommon to have other family members help raise your children, right? So mostly aunties, right? If you get in trouble as a kid, it's nothing to have an auntie scold you, right? So,
right.
But just being able to bring in the different aspects of the family, and that it, kokum and mushum, they weren't so much a part of the disciplining, but the raising, the wisdom, that love, right? And the parents are more a part of the way I've always seen it, and in our families, and they're the ones providing, right? But they're bringing that, always bringing that nurturing home and love and discipline. Like you said, there's that balance. So trying to show what that was like.
Yeah.
And not saying that my childhood was perfect. You always pick out the good stuff, right? So that's what I try and do, and show all the good things of what my family life was, but what I see in our culture as cultural values. And then also the same things of how I've tried to raise my kids with that balance of, I love you, but honey, don't tempt me, right? Don't test me.
Don't try me.
Yeah.
I love that. And again, I'm asking these questions because I see so many similarities with my home country culture as well, because it's a communal type of culture. Everybody raises the other person's kid. Well, things are changing now with, westernization and, the whole world coming to your screen. But I see a lot of that balance in my culture as well. And one of the things that I love about that balance is the fact that elderly people have such a strong influence on the kids. And Kokum tells Rosie and Maggie to listen not just with their ears, but also with their hearts. That was really beautiful. And what she's basically telling them is listen deeply. So is this deep listening something that's encouraged in your culture, or can you expand just a little bit more about that? Because I think that statement was so powerful about listening not just with the ears but also with the hearts.
Yeah, and I think too that comes back. It reminded me when you spoke that. It reminded me, my cookum, who's from Gordon's Reserve, she used to make moss bags. So moss bags were where you put the baby in and you tie them up, and essentially only their head is out, and the mom can carry them on their backs. So she used to make those, or cradle boards, they're also called. And I was always taught they were made that way so that the baby can learn other ways other than, because we're very tactile, right? We're tactile learners. We got to feel and touch. But it showed babies how to listen and see using the other senses,
right?
Also in the parenting. And I think that's what I was trying to get across with that too. And it's something too that we're taught, whether it's from our cookums, mushrooms, or aunties, right? We can learn more than just listening or seeing, right? There's something else in us, right?
Right.
To be able to learn.
Right. And not too long after she tells them this, she tells them the story about the two sisters who carried light, and how they were tussling and trying to, they were constantly in conflict with one another. And then they said to themselves, okay, we need to bring our light together and find a path forward. And again, I thought that story was so powerful because one of the things that I see in my storytelling tradition is that when you tell children a story, you don't just entertain them, but you give them an opportunity to listen deeply. You give them an opportunity to take something away from that story and go and think about it, almost like a gift. The story is a gift, right? That they get to take away and think about. And as I was pondering on this story, because we have stories like that in my culture as well, I thought I'd ask you how you see these stories being told in your culture. Do you find that there are more of these types of storytelling still? Do you find that these stories are still being told in your culture, or do you find that maybe there's a bit less of it, and that's why you've shared that with us in the book?
I think for me, it's less, which is why I wanted to bring it back. Like, I don't know how other families are. I can't speak for other Indigenous families, whether they're Cree or Métis or wherever they're at. But for me, I knew I grew up with some, but it wasn't a whole lot. Most of the ones we got told were usually scary ones usually it has a lesson in order for you not go out at night, right? But I remember getting told some, and I just wanted to bring some of that back. So the legend in there that Cookum tells is actually my own rendition, and I had to put a disclaimer at the beginning to let them know, like, it wasn't a legend that was passed down from any elders. It was a story. I'm sure there are stories that are similar to it, but I needed something as a storyteller, and I was putting myself in Cookum's position. How would I speak to two little girls who are always fighting? What would speak to them? Right? And like you said, with elderly people, and I know in our culture, being able to bestow that wisdom, that kindness, that love, but without scolding them. Right. Because if the mom would step in right away, mom would be like, okay, you two behave, right? Stop your fighting. That doesn't resonate with kids. But when a gentle older soul comes in and be able to paint a picture, how much easier it is for children to learn from painting a picture. So when they have the image of two star sisters in the sky fighting and then coming down to earth together, to me, just that imagery was so much easier for children to pick up, which is why we tell children stories all the time, right?
Right.
Imagery is so strong with kids to be able to learn from. So that's where that came from.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so powerful that one of the things you also point out is the way that you reach children. It's not often that intuitive, just yelling and snapping at them. Sometimes it's taking a step back and giving them an opportunity to look at the situation from another angle, which is what you've done with the story. So the other thing that I paused and thought about is this: there's a phrase or a sentence in your statement of intention, and it says, "We have far more than just solemn stories to tell." I really, really love that because there's such a there's so much pain when you think about the story of First Nations and Indigenous people, and sometimes that's all you know. It's the pain. And I think that was such a beautiful call out. Like, there's so much more to us than these stories of pain. There are also stories of joy. There are stories of life and love and family and innovation and creativity. And so I thought I'd ask you, what does it mean to you to be a storyteller of your traditions?
Again, with that line and when I tell stories, the way I see it, I'm inviting you into our home. So with us, with Métis and most Indigenous cultures, eating and coming to eat with us is a big, big deal. Food is very important to us. And like I remember growing up, whenever we go visit other family members, the first thing you would do, you hug each other, you welcome each other, but it was always sit down and have tea and some kind of food. So that's why in the book, there's a lot of reference to food because that is a big part of our culture.
Yeah.
But it always brought us together, right? And it was bringing them together. And I said, the way I see it as is when people, that's one of my hope is when they open those books, you're opening the door into our kitchen, which is very personal. When you come into someone's house and you sit at their table, that's a very personal moment where I'm showing you all of my house, my dirty dishes, may not be perfect, but this is it, and this is us, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna eat my food, we're gonna share, we're gonna laugh. So that's how I see stories as.
Yeah.
Is I'm inviting you into our kitchen to be able to see who we are. And I think in those moments is when we find so many similarities between one another, that we're not as different as we think we are, although we're maybe from different nations or different cultures. So I think that's the biggest reason why I do that.
Yeah. I love that. Your response also makes me think about the characters themselves, Rosie and Maggie. And anybody who reads this book is going to be, and I keep looking this way because the book is right here. Anybody who reads it is going to be, I'm trying to find the right word. It's not startled and it's not stunned. It is, you will stop at the amount of play that these girls engage in. It's so much play. It's a lot of energetic play that I would say that even for boys in at least in the schools these days, they would say that that's a lot of play for boys. But these girls are playing with so much energy and so much creativity and so much audacity. They're learning to shoot. They witness a castration. They do all manner of things, right? And I love the fact that you portray girls in a different light. These aren't girls who are just playing with their dolls, and there's nothing wrong with either of those things, whether the girls are playing with dolls or they're learning to shoot or whatever. But I thought I needed to ask you how you were able to be audacious enough to tell that kind of story. Was there any fear that people might feel like these girls are too much?
Well, I knew there would be, like, people saying, okay, this is just too much. But I know in my defense, when anyone else, when they read it, and I'm like, hey, well, this is kind of how I grew up. So you can't say we don't exist. And I said, I wrote it because I wanted other girls out there because to know that they feel seen, that you're not the only one out there doing all these silly things, right? I did make bike ramps way back, when I was little. I'm the one who was in the back of my mom's car yet again. I've got a million scars from head to toe from all crazy things I used to do. And she'd be yelling at me in the back seat, don't bleed on my seats, right? And the horseback riding, getting bucked off a million times, the building of things. And even in this last book, I told my sister, I'm like, well, people are going to know all our secrets as kids, how much fighting we used to do. And then we actually used to play the escape game. I said, they have the escape rooms nowadays. I'm like, I said, we invented that. West Side Saskatoon, the original escape room was us as kids when mom and dad were gone. We tied each other up put them in boxes, threw each other into a closet, and we'd see how long it took you to escape. We were just, that was how we were. I don't know. My dad used to always say that he used to get mad because he'd come home and there would be holes in the wall, closet doors ripped off. There was always something damaged. He's like, it's like I live in a house full of boys. That's what his comment always was. But for us, playing and doing all that was just normal. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I encouraged that with my kids. Like I would play endlessly with them. I homeschooled them for a while. So we did a lot of crazy things together. So yeah, I just wanted them to know that there's that freedom in that play. And that's where you learn. So yeah.
Yeah. And you can tell how the impact of that play on the girls, because there's so much confidence that they exude, right? They don't feel any sense of timidity. There's a healthy competition between the girls, and I think that's so necessary in today's world. I don't think the book tries to say this is who you should be or that's who you should be. The book, to me, really says if this is who you are, that's fine. And there's so much about yourself that you can discover when you are confident. There's so much about your creativity that can shine forth through that avenue, that safe space for you to explore different things. And I really love that. I don't think that is something that you hear often, or something that is encouraged. And I really appreciate the fact that for girls who just want to shoot and learn how to do things that are not girly, that's okay for them.
Unconventional, as they would say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think too, like with their story with Rosie and Maggie, there is a subtext to it, right? What I was trying to get across as a grown woman. I think we've all been in situations where it always feels like someone's in competition with us. We're not meaning to be competitive. That's just how we are. But it feels like sometimes women are just always butting heads. And then the whole story, when I was trying to invent that legend, I wanted that legend to also reach women, to be able to know that we're all meant to shine in a different way, but we just help one another instead of always seeing that we're in competition with one another, that we each have a spot. We each have a gift that where we're supposed to, where we belong. We're not in competition with one another. We're here to actually help one another. Right. So how much stronger those sisters were when they each recognized their own giftings and their own light. So that was the subtext in a bigger version, I guess.
I mean, I think it did come through that that subtext. It did come through, and I mean, I think it's something that's also very interesting, because when we think about competition, we see the competition, your hair is nicer than my hair and all of that kind of stuff. But when you read about Rosie and Maggie, the kind of competition that they have is the type that isn't quite common. It's, I want to learn something and you want to learn something. Let's see who's going to do it better. Yep. Right? It's not, the competition isn't about what I have, what I've acquired, but what I can do, what I can produce, how creative I can be in this endeavor. And I think that is a very important lesson for, maybe not lesson, but it's an important thing for girls to know.
Yeah. And that's also too, just showing the difference between how different they looked. Rosie had red hair and freckles.
Yeah.
And again, just because we're, as being Métis, in our culture, people can look. My mother was very fair-skinned and she had red hair. I look more like my dad. I have darker skin and dark curly hair. It's just like there's always just those changes. But again, that's not what's important, right? So in them learning from one another, the skills that each of them have. Like for Maggie to learn from, her competition, the one who she thought she was in competition for so long, right?
Okay, so when we think about all of this, it really, there's one thread that ties all of these things together, and it's really the beauty of your culture. And I think I learned a lot reading your book, because, again, I'm going to go back to the word audacity. There is an audacity with which you tell this story that you use all the names, you use even the nicknames. There are times I had to stop and read it again and say, okay, that is a nickname. This is an actual person's name. And I love the fact that every fabric of your culture was so beautifully shared with the reader. And there's no fear that people may not understand or that people may have. I think you just put it out there and allowed people to interpret it and read it however they like. And I love that. And it makes me want to ask you what tip you would give to writers who are writing about non-Western cultures.
I think being authentic is one. But secondly, like I said, when I gave you that writer's intent, being able to show the other side, we all have tragedy, right? We all have injustices.
Mm-hmm.
But what about all the good that we're made of? Share that. That's what people want to hear. They hear all the tragedies. They have news. We all have news channels. We can all turn one on and we can read. We know about that. But if you can share the beauty, the humor, for me, humor is a big deal. In Native culture, I'm sorry, it could be a funeral and there's laughter. It could be anything. There's always laughing. Like the big anti-laugh, it's a big joke, but it's real. It does come from deep within, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big part of our culture. And I was like, there are so many cultures that have that. There are so many idiosyncrasies within your own culture, but that makes you unique. But it's very beautiful. It's funny. It's full of love. Those are the things that you want to share, things that people may not know about who aren't a part of that culture. So I think that's why I always try and tend to bring my stories, like even with my art or, my shorts and feature, it's like we do have tragedy, but I always try and bring the humor and the beauty and the love of our culture and our people interwoven in there to know that I am not my tragedy. I am not the things that happened in my mom in day school or my kukum in residential school. Those helped shape who I am, but that's not who I am. And that's not what my culture is made of.
Right.
My culture is made up of love and humor and food and goodness. And that's what I try to exemplify through my stories. So
I love that. I've never thought about that before. Writing about the beauty, which is basically what you're saying. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, Arnolda, we've come to the end of our time here together, but I wanted to give you a chance to share from your heart in less than 1 minute.
Share from my heart in less than 1 minute. Oh my God. What am I supposed to say? I don't know. You can do it. Put your back into it. So your encouragement for the day.
You did it.
That is my most favorite quote. Yeah. Don't ever fear that you're not able to do something. You won't know until you try. And I think the biggest thing is I know for me, it's always that fear of I'm not qualified to go into this room or I don't belong at this table. And like I said, whether it's come with age or whatever, it's like, you know what? I'm here. We'll see what happens. So just being able to walk through that. And I think the thing is, if you're being authentic and you're doing it with love, that's kind of what your underlying purpose is. Then I think you'll be fine in whatever that you're jumping into. So
authenticity and love. Okay.
Yeah. And humor. I'm sorry. If you can't laugh at something, then it's always got to be laughter somewhere.
Yeah. Authenticity, love, humor. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I like that combination.
Yeah. And I think too, like, especially if you're looking at writing for young adults, that resonates with them, right? Yeah. Especially if you can get a kid to laugh, it actually means that they're paying attention.
So what if you're not a humorous person?
But you don't have to be funny. Listen to your family. Who is funny in your family? Right? Like my brother, Vince, who's in the book, Vince, when he tells all his lame jokes, those are most of his actual jokes. So it's, you have humor in your culture. You would have someone funny in your family. So it's pulling from that. And it's like every writer's worst nightmare. They know our secret. We people watch so often and we listen to everybody. So what you say or do can and will be held against you in my body. So it's just pulling from that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All the pieces are coming together in my head. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, even in my feature, it's a dramatic feature. It's a very, very heavy subject. It's on residential schools and what happened to a family. But other people who've read it, they said, we love how you do have these just humorous moments. So I have one character, a little nephew, and he's just this innocent kid, but he's funny. And he just says these funny things just every now and again. But it is those just little breathing moments. So you can have humor. To me, I find humor as a breath, especially if you're writing or playwriting or whatever it is you're doing. These little moments where you can have a little breather of all the heavy stuff. Right. That humor just gives your heart a little break and a little bit like, okay, I can breathe. And then we can go back to the dark stuff again. So, right. Yeah.
Right. But I like that. There's that balance that we're talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was even able to do that with my play. Just the one character, same thing, kind of drops little funny things here and there, but they're dealing with the fact that the road allowance people were shipped off in train cars and their houses were burnt down, and then, but that is a tragedy. But then there's just this humor that kind of weaves in and out. So it's just finding how can you find that balance? So
I keep nodding because I'm thinking very deeply.
You're thinking about it.
Oh yeah, because it's you're making a fabric of something. There's pain, but there's also joy, right? And then there's pain, and then there's joy, and it's finding the right moments to put in the joy, and then talking about the reality of the pain once more. So, yeah, I hear you. You. Oh, thank you for coming to chat with me today. I'm so grateful that you shared about your culture and your art. And I know you're a very, very, very busy woman. And I find it very inspiring that you're able to juggle so many balls. And, in one moment, that it's time to write a book. And another time it's time to do your exhibits. And another time it's time to do your plays. So I'm constantly inspired by that. And I want to thank you once more for coming today.
Like I said, it's a circus tent and you just juggle and everything's on fire, but it's okay. We're going to be fine.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for listening. If you're listening or watching, if you're watching us, the links to Arnolda's book will be in the description to get Maggie Lou Meet Her Match. And there will also be links to connect with Arnolda. I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, thank you for having me.
On the next episode, I'll be chatting with another inspiring artist. But before then, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this show and this episode. Feel free to drop me a note here or send me a DM on Instagram at Journey of the Art Pod. Finally, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or follow and rate the show if you're listening elsewhere. Help me connect with other artists who need a dose of inspiration today. Until next time, stay on the journey of your art.